one of the next things I want to ask you about is because we often hear these terms in whether it comes into the quotes or it just comes up in conversation, which is around property searches. What are property searches? We often hear, local authority, environmental, water drainage, searches, and from a consumer's point of view, they think, well, what are you searching for? So when we say property searches, what are they? How do you go about obtaining them? And what are sometimes the complexities of doing that, and maybe what leads to sometimes delays relating to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the searches themselves are split into a wide variety of areas. The most crucial, I think, from a timing perspective, is the local authority search, because that information is not automated yet. Hopefully it will be sometime in the future. I think they're going around on local authorities, automating each one by one. I think I worked out with the length of time it takes, it'll be 17 years before the country is digitalized from a local authority search perspective.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The information is so valuable. And if we take it back, this is probably one of the first major things that happens in the process. And it will, if you're a client buying, the estate agent will say to you, have you ordered searches yet? Because it's the first part in which you might part with some money. So it shows real intent. But also, it can, depending on where you are in the country, depending how quick or slow your local authority is, can take a long time. So the average is about 10 days. Some local authorities, Wiltshire, Stratford, 12 weeks. A phenomenal amount of time. Hackney had a cyber attack a couple of years ago. They couldn't do it, full stop. So their delay was about 2 years. So we're indemnifying against it. So searches are vitally important. They have to be done if you are taking a mortgage. If you are not taking a mortgage, you can choose whether you want them done. We would always advise you did. Some of the information it might cover things about the property. So restrictions, it will tell you if you are in a conservation area, tell you if it's a listed building. It will tell you if there are any covenants and restrictions and things like that, any charges. So there's no good you going to view a property thinking, oh, we're going to do this enormous modern extension out the back and not getting your local authority search back, because if you've got an agricultural tie, you're in a conservation area, you might want to paint the house a certain color and you can't. You might have to paint the house a certain color, but you might not want to. You might think, why is it pink? Well, it has to be pink. And it's a local authority search that will tell you it has to be pink. So these are bits of nuggets of information that help us build a picture. The environmental search will tell you radon gas levels if you're on the Cotswolds, or will tell us what the flood risk is like. There are so many things that are important for you as a buyer to know that we just wouldn't know otherwise. The title and the register, they give us, a reasonable idea about, say, covenants and boundaries and all these types of things. But local authority search gives us a lot more detail. Community infrastructure is one. You might be buying a property to rebuild, and yes, you probably get that information on the website. But again, it's in there, and it tells us this is subject to SIL, it's community infrastructure levy. This is how much it is. We'll refer to the website. And then you've got other things as well, like planning permission. So it will tell you what planning permission is subject to the land, to the property, past, present, and future, but also surrounding areas as well. Imagine buying a property, and this actually personal circumstances now. I went to view a property, and there was nothing out the back. It was just fields. And I said to the agent, is this subject to any development? He said, oh, no, absolutely not, sir. This view is protected for life.
Protected for life? Wow.
And sure
we
enough,
put that in writing?
Yes, should have asked for it in writing. Sure enough, part of the joint core strategy to build 4,500 homes just signed off. And that comes out in search. So, this information is so valuable. If you're about to have HS2 go through your back garden, you need to know about it.
Yeah, you want to know that.
The agent might not tell you. So this information needs to be ordered as soon as possible, because you don't want to be seen to be delaying the process. Um, and once you've got all that information, we then package it together, build a picture, point out the parts that are really important for you to know, and raise any inquiries we need to, and get to a point where the client knows and understands exactly what they're committing to legally before they legally commit.
Okay. And one of the words you mentioned there, which we often hear, is around indemnifying.
Mm.
Um, when is that utilized, and when is it not utilized? Because I know from a consumer's point of view, sometimes it's when there's a delay, and certainly when it's last minute, it's like they would have maybe heard the term indemnify, and often it's often used as a, oh, we need this thing, but we haven't got it, so we've just indemnified it and we've moved on. And there can be an urge sometimes, well, let's just indemnify everything and off we go. Why is an indemnity used? Is there a typical cost related to it? And there are other times when it can't be used.
Yeah, so an indemnity policy is a risk versus reward strategy. Um, there are, of course, risks involved with any insurance policy. But you've got to understand the likelihood of that happening. And this comes back to having a very good solicitor, proactive solicitor, somebody who's working with you to get the deal done. Now, if there's a covenant on the property that's hundreds of years old and the owner, 2 or 3 owners ago, breached that covenant, what's the chance of somebody coming back now and making a claim? Pretty slim. So an indemnity policy in a scenario like that would be perfect, because you're indemnifying against if somebody ever did come back to make a claim from you for breaching the covenant. The insurance policy pays out and you're not at risk,
And
or
do
limited risk.
you normally, with that, do you pay up front for the indemnity policy, or you only pay in the
Yeah,
event
so
of a claim?
no. You just buy the policy as a lump sum. They can be as little as a couple of dozen pounds to hundreds of pounds. It could be up to £1,000, depending on the scale of the risk. But what your lawyer should do is go away for you and get 3 quotes, and let the client choose which one they want to go for based on price or quality of insurance product.
Okay. And so with that payment made, let's say it's £100, they've covered off that risk. Therefore, if that risk comes up, there's no further payment the client would have to make. They've already paid. The cover is then completely covered by the indemnity.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's no better scenario than us sorting out the issue in the first place.
Sure.
But the indemnity policy there is there because it's a quicker option.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you, Chris. So we've talked about property searches. One of the other words we often hear is inquiries. So inquiries have been raised. There are outstanding inquiries. We need to make inquiries about this. Again, from an outsider's point of view, it can seem where do the inquiries come from? Is there a default list you start off with? We always ask these 15 inquiries, or is it obviously typically quite bespoke depending on what the need is? And what are some of the challenges, I guess, from a solicitor's point of view in getting the outcome of those inquiries resolved? Because of course, until they are resolved, the transaction can't proceed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the inquiries that are sort of standard and in a list does depend on firm to firm. So some firms will have their list of inquiries, and let's not name any names, but if you're a larger firm and you get responses to say 4 out of the 5 inquiries, but the 5th inquiry is just not relevant, they've asked it because that's part of their process, even though it doesn't make any sense to ask it. And we quite often have disagreements with other sides, because even though we cannot answer that inquiry, they still come back and say, "Can you answer point 5, please?" It's so frustrating, but it's because it's a tick box exercise for them.
Sure.
If you get to firm that are more bespoke and experienced, they will only ask the inquiries that are relevant. And the inquiries, in simple terms, are just questions. They're just questions about all the information that's been gathered throughout the process. The buyer's lawyer will raise the most inquiries, and these inquiries will be based on the information that have been gathered right from the very start. So the seller will have a pack and some information they need to complete about the property. and that will come across to the buyer's lawyer. The buyer's lawyer will read all that information, start to sort of draft some inquiries. They will get the search results back, draft some more inquiries off the back of those results. They will look at the title, maybe raise some more inquiries, and you get to a picture where there are a few questions there that need answering. And it will go to the buyer's lawyer. They'll try their best to answer them. They'll go back to the seller. They'll go back to the vendor themselves and say, "Oh, we've just been asked about this, this, and this. Can you confirm?" And then we get the answer we want. I think the reason it takes so long is just because of the lawyers who are taking on too much work. So their job at that moment in time is to raise these inquiries. Once they raise them and get them out the door, that file then goes to the bottom of the pile. They deal with all the others at the top. When the responses come back in, they don't come in at the top, they come in at the bottom. So wait for it to get back to the top, look at the answers, maybe raise some more off the back of the answers they have. Goes back to the bottom again. So that's why the process at that period of the process takes some time, is just because there are a lot of firms that have the inability, and that isn't being rude, it's just being honest, the inability to prioritize certain cases. And why would they? I guess, if you've got hundreds of them, why is one more important than the other when you haven't got that open line of communication with your client, I suppose. But that is the reality of it. It's just a question and answer process to form a solid due diligence perception that this is all of the things you need to know as a client before you legally commit to buying. And we satisfied everything that would be a concern to us. We satisfied everything that would be a concern to you as a client. And we're now ready to progress to a point of making this legally binding.
Okay. And I guess just thinking of a word that you used in your previous part where we were just talking around property search, you mentioned around covenants. What is a covenant, and what's examples of that, and the challenges again from a legal point of view of overcoming them?
Yeah, so covenants and restrictions can be put onto a title at any point. And the most common, I would say, is around restriction of development. So you'll quite frequently get ones that say you can only have one, they call them villas, one property on this piece of land at any one time. So that would then stop you from knocking it down and building two. You might get restrictions on size, you might get restrictions and covenants on use of land. So it's mostly around things that you can and cannot do. A lot of them are really historic, don't make any sense anymore, and just aren't very relevant. So yeah, I would say that so title registers are public information. So as a client, you can always go on and have a look, but really the terminology that's used in a lot of these documents are quite difficult to interpret. And actually, this is the really fun bit. A lot of it is down to interpretation. So really, you want a good lawyer, either who's seen something similar before and has a solution, or has somebody who's quite clever who can just look at it and say, well, actually, I'm pretty sure this is what it means.
And again, that goes back to the experience of the solicitor, doesn't it? Because if it is that old terminology, kind of old English terms that are being used in there, there's an element of this is just not applicable anymore. Sign off, move on, or actually, this is a risk. Is there examples there where you'd use indemnity policies in those with regards to covenants and restrictions, regards something that's outside of being able to be put to bed today, but you want to cover against any future risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are some you can and some you can't. But absolutely, if there's a covenant in place that has been in place for some time and has already been breached in the past, and you're buying a property, the chances are the buyer that bought the property in the first place probably indemnified against it. And every time that property changes hands for the next X amount of 100 years, it will carry on being indemnified against. And that's just, it's just one of the ways of doing it. And that's why the indemnity policy route is a good one in terms of progression speed, but you cannot beat actually solving the issue, because this then won't become a future issue for you when you come to sell it.
And the whole thing around indemnifying, again, is that's not just a recent thing. That's something that's spanned, many decades across UK property law.
More prominent now. So it's become much more widely accepted, the indemnity route. So the covenant question is a great example. If you have a covenant that was put into place within recent memory, and the person you're buying from is likely to know who benefits from that, then the first port of call, the first solution would be, right, let's get in touch with that person, see if we can pay them to remove it.
Right, okay.
And then it would be, actually, we can't do that, let's indemnify.
Right, okay. Like you say, try and resolve it, put it to bed, but if not, then you have got the indemnifying route.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, please ask below and hit subscribe below so you don't miss out on our next episode.